Thanks for joining me. Welcome back. Disclaimer, this is not legal advice. I am not a lawyer. This is for information and entertainment purposes only. This is sharing on a public record my conscience and convictions relating to even being asked to request a religious exemption or any exemption from an experimental gene therapy and other treatments, prophylaxis, fill in the blank, that has been proven not only ineffective, but it's simply a social control measure. This is the parts of a lawful contract. We're going to go through the 8 parts of a lawful contract. I would suggest if this is the first one you're watching, you go back to video 1, which is the introduction of why I chose religious exemption over a medical exemption, a philosophical exemption, or if I were in Indiana as of January 6th of 2022, a natural immunity exemption. The second video was regarding the religious test, both substantive and functional religious test created by my employer to determine if I actually have rights regarding my sincerely held religious beliefs. And please don't think I'm speaking just Christian. You can go back to the other videos and see that whatever your worldview is, that's your religion, and how you walk that out is your worship. Okay? So before you scream, oh, he's one of the tinfoil hat Christians, no, I'm not. And before anyone ever told me anything, and if I ever hear anyone try to tell me again I'm a sovereign citizen, I'm going to yell jumbo shrimp and military intelligence. Those words do not go together. They cannot, nor have they ever gone together. You cannot be both sovereign and a citizen, according to the definitions of those two terms in Black's Law, and I would suggest 6th edition or earlier, which was what the framers were using when they wrote the Organic Constitution. Okay? So with that said, this is the parts of a lawful contract, and I will read them off to you. All right, so the parts of a lawful contract include the absence of enticement or punitives. 1, parties have to be competent to contract. The parties to a contract should be competent, being age of consent, of sound mind, not disqualified from contracting by any law to which he or she is subject. A flaw in capacity may be due to minority, lunacy, idiocy, drunkenness, or dissimilarity of kinds. We'll get into that. The parties should be of the same kind, being either legal fiction actors, accommodating parties, or living men and women. Allowing more than 2 parties, but never a mixture of the kinds, and in their respective jurisdictions only. Free and genuine consent. The consent of the parties to the agreement must be free and genuine. The consent of the parties should not be obtained by misrepresentation, fraud, undue influence, coercion, or mistake. If the consent is obtained by any of these means, then the contract is not valid or legally or lawfully enforceable. Condition 3 of a lawful contract is full disclosure. When negotiating a contract, full disclosure is the step of providing all material information, or telling the, quote, whole truth, unquote, above any matter which may influence the decision-making of the other party or parties before they decide to enter into a contract. If either party fails to make full disclosure, the contract is null and void. 4, valuable consideration. The consideration is something of value possessed by the parties that is brought to the contract table. This is something of value, is bargained for, and given in exchange for a promise or a performance. The parties must each receive a benefit, and each must suffer a detriment. To be enforceable, a contract must have valuable consideration. A contract is unenforceable if it has insufficient or unequal consideration without agreement. 5, certainty of terms. The terms and conditions of the contract must be fully disclosed and agreed upon, and must be certain and fixed. Any subsequent variation of terms must be agreed upon, or the contract is null and void. 6, meeting of the minds. A meeting of the minds, quote, consensus ad item, unquote, occurs between the parties when they recognize each other, understand their mutual obligations, and agree. A meeting of the minds occurs between living men and women in lawful manners, common law jurisdiction, constitutional, and between legal fiction actors and legal matters, admiralty, maritime jurisdiction, courts of equity. A contract must be either lawful or legal. If one party to a contract makes a signature as an accommodating party to a legal fiction person, while the other party makes an autograph for a living man and woman, the parties are unequal kinds, and the contract is null and void. No contract. The difference between autographs and signatures, we touched on that with kinds. Lawful written contracts between living men and women must carry the wet ink autographs of the parties, comprising living identifications such as a thumbprint. But more often, living standing is recognized by an unambiguous declaration with a handwritten wet ink autograph, including the prefix by, quote unquote, and or the words all rights reserved, written without prejudice, written below. Legal written contracts between legal fiction actors must carry the wet ink signatures of the parties as an accommodation from a man or a woman. Privity of contracts. This is the last one. Privity of contracts between the parties. No third party can obtain rights contained within a contract or buy and sell a contract without the express permission of the original parties. These are the conditions of a lawful contract. No enticements, no threats of coercion, fraud, forced under duress, and they have to be within the same kind. A corporation is a stack of papers. It's a legal person. It's also dead. So whenever you see your name in all caps, that is you being the accommodating party for your legal fiction person, which is dead. That's the only way they can take you to court. Look at anything you've ever received from any agency, state, county, federal, and your name will be all caps. That is your corporate name as an employee of USDC. But that's deep, and that's a different story altogether. And that's something that needs to be addressed at a personal level by you according to your conscience and your convictions, which is what I'm doing here. This is just a public record of what transpired on Friday between myself and my corporation, and they have 5 days to respond. And that's handled in the next video, which is to remain in honor. I've offered a religious exemption and conditional acceptance offer. It's an offer to contract, because that's what a mandate is an offer to contract, because it's not for all persons, it's for specific categories and classes of persons. For example, I'm an employee of a corporation. If I weren't employed with them, I wouldn't be asking them for an exemption. Anyway, all right, so that's for that part. And if this is your first one, I would suggest going back to the rest of the videos to get up to speed to where we are right now. I'm probably going to leave links of all of them in every video so you can get there quickly and effectively. I don't do the cards thing because most people don't get to this point to read the cards ever. In my opinion, in my experience, so I don't do cards. I don't do end cards. Okay, so the next one is going to be the religious exemption, conditional acceptance, and offer to contract that I submitted to the corporation on Friday. So come on back, join me for that one.